ready to deal with two very special cases of linear equations. So the I can statement in 5.6 is I can understand and graph horizontal and vertical lines. So I'll give you a second to write the word horizontal in there. And then a common thing for people to do is to misspell both of those words. They spell horizontal is usually spelled right. They get the TAL right there. And then vertical, they usually spell with a CLE. So just remember that both of those end with an AL, horizontal and vertical. All right, so a quick warm up here. You should know the answer to this. You should be able to rattle this off anytime. So if somebody said, what is slope? Slope is a fraction. So let's write the word fraction right there. And remember, it's a fraction that represents two things. It represents how steep the line is, and it tells us in which direction the line slants, which direction it slants. Okay, so keep that in mind as we're talking about this, because we've got some unique situations to deal with here. So on example 1, it says state the slope and the y-intercept and then graph. So if we were to state both the slope and the y-intercept, we want to think back and think, well, okay, if I put this in slope-intercept form, which is what we've been practicing for quite a while, then I don't have an x term. So what I'd have to do is I'd have to write y equals, there are no x's, so that means the coefficient there would be 0, and then plus 3. So the y-intercept is 3, and the slope on this one is 0. That may ring a bell because we've done some of these before. So let's see, on this one it's going to cross at 3. There's our anchor. And then we know if we've got a slope of 0, what that means is there's no rise, there's only a run. So we don't go up or down from here. We just go to the right or we go to the left. It doesn't matter which. So we can go as far as we want to the right, and we can go as far as we want to the left. We'd have a bunch of dots along here and a bunch of dots along there. Now here's what I want you to notice about that, because if you can get this about this type of line, then the next type of line that's a little bit more unique is a little bit easier. So notice that when we have y equals a number, okay, whenever we have y equals a number, then what it does is it tells you what the y coordinate has to be. Like this is saying the y coordinate is 3. So on every single one of these points, whether you go over to 6, you go up to 3, whether you go back to -4, you go up to 3, whether you stay at 0, you go up to 3. It always tells you what the y coordinate is, but since there's no x in the equation, the x coordinate can be any number at all. So as long as y is 3, we can go as far as we want to the right and as far as we want to the left. The only condition here is that we have to stay where the y coordinate is equal to 3. So in other words, we've got to be 3 above the x-axis. We can't go more than that. We can't go up here. We can't go less than that down here. So we wouldn't have a tilted line going up and we wouldn't have a tilted line going down. We just know that y has to be 3, so that's going to be a horizontal line. Okay, so this is horizontal. Now, if you haven't heard this before, one way that you can remember what horizontal is most everybody knows what the horizon is. The horizon is, you look off in the distance at a beach, or, if you're on the desert or something like that. It's this nice flat horizon that the sun goes down or comes up above. So when we say horizontal, that's talking about the horizon. So that is horizontal, okay? Now, if we look at this equation right here, there's no way we can put this in slope-intercept form, okay? There's no y in here at all. And in order to have slope-intercept form, you've got to have a y in there. There's no y. So here's what I want you to notice. Notice that when we have x equals a number, then it tells you what the x coordinate needs to be. So it's telling you what the x coordinate is, but there's no condition on what the y coordinate can be. It doesn't tell you what y has to be. So y can be any number you want. So let's think about this. If over on this one we said y has to be 3, so you can go as far to the right or as far to the left as you want, all we have to do is make sure that we're 3 above the x-axis, then when we say x has to equal 4, it's telling us that as long as we're at 4 on the x-axis, you can go as far up as you want and as far down as you want, as long as we are 4 units to the right of the y-axis. We're over here at 4 right here, and we can go as far up or as far down as we want. Now, this was horizontal like the horizon. This, when it's straight up and down, that is called vertical. Okay, so that's vertical. So we want to sum this up. It's literally this easy. If you see y equals a number, that is a horizontal line. So y equals a number is a horizontal line. And if you see x equals a number, then that is a vertical line. Okay, so horizontal goes like this, vertical goes like this. Now I've got double asterisk by this. I am going to circle this, and I want you to circle this. Please don't mix those up. Most people get it in their head that when they see y equals a number or x equals a number, it's one of these, but a lot of times they mix this up and they think, oh, well, it's x equals a number, so that's got to be kind of like the x-axis. It's the exact opposite of that. It tells you where we are on the x-axis, so it's got to cross that axis. This one tells you where we cross the y-axis, and that's one way that people use to keep this straight. Whenever they say y equals a number, they think, okay, that tells me I've got to cross the y-axis, so it's got to be a horizontal line. Whenever they see x equals a number, it's got to cross that axis. It's got to cross the x-axis, so that's got to be a vertical line. So please make sure you keep those straight and don't mix them up. So let's take a look at example number 3. We've got a couple different equations to graph here. I've got a red and a blue one for each one, so I'm going to color code these. If you can, that's great. If you can't, that's fine too. So take a look here. We've got y equals -2. That means it's going to cross the y-axis at -2, and we can have it go as far to the left or the right as we want. Remember, this is going to be horizontal. If y is equal to 4, it's going to cross the y-axis at 4. It can't cross the other axis. We can go as far to the left or the right as we want, and that's what it looks like. So remember, this is horizontal. When you have y equals a number, it's horizontal. So if we've got this case over here, whoops, I should have done that in blue. Let me do that in blue really quickly. It's at 4, and then we can go as far to the right or as far to the left as we want. Okay, let's do this red one right here. X equals 1. That means we know it has to hit x equals 1. It's got to cross the x-axis at 1. So I'm going to put a point right here, and there is no y-intercept. It doesn't cross the y-axis at all. So I can go as far up as I want and as far down as I want. Okay, so every single one of these points, like this point right here, would be 1, 5, because we'd go right 1 and up 5. This point right here would be 1, -3, because I'd go right 1 and down 3. Y can be anything we want. We can go as far as we want in the y direction, the up and down direction, but x has to be 3. Sorry, x has to be 1. Okay, next one, x equals -3. So we're going to cross at -3. It tells us which axis we cross, and y can be anything we want. So we can go way up in the y direction, way down in the y direction, and we're all set to go. So I'm going to label these. Again, this is x equals -3. This one was y equals 4. This was x equals 1, and this was y equals -2. And remember, this one here is vertical. Vertical there. Okay, so I've got 2 more to graph, and these are kind of unique. This one says y equals 0, so that means it crosses the y-axis at 0. So right here, and remember, if it's y equals 0, then it is a then it is a horizontal. So I'm just going to write H-O-R-I-Z, horizontal. Okay, so it goes like this. All right, now that is a fancy way to describe the x-axis. All right, and by the same token, if we said x is equal to 0, that's going to be vertical, so that's going to be straight up and down. So we're going to go straight up and we're going to go straight down. That's going to be a fancy way to describe the y-axis. Okay, so this was x equals 0, and this was y equals 0. Seems a little bit strange, I know, that y equals 0 would describe the x-axis and x equals 0 would describe the y-axis, but that is the way it works out. Every one of these has an x-coordinate of 0. Every one of these has a y-coordinate of 0, because we didn't go up or down, and here, because we didn't go right or left, the x has got to be 0. Okay, let's take a look at a couple more. It says state the slope of each line, then write the equation of the line. Notice that this is a vertical line. If it's a vertical line, then it's got to tell us where it crosses the x-axis. So it crosses the x-axis at -4. Okay, now as far as what the slope is, we could say 2 things. We could say no slope, or we could say this. We could say slope is undefined. Those both mean the same thing. In other words, there's no number to represent how steep this is. Remember when we were getting dropped off heli skiing or something like that? When we get dropped off, there's nothing for us to land on, so there's no number that represents how steep that is. If we take a look at this next one right here, this is a horizontal line, so I'm going to write horizontal. And so that's going to be y equals a number, and all we need to do is figure out what the y coordinate is along here. Every one of these has a y coordinate of -5. Okay, So there's that. And then we need to say what the slope is. On this one, the slope is, remember, if we were dropped off skiing here, there'd be something for us to land on. We just wouldn't slide either direction. So the slope is 0. The number that represents how steep that is 0. Okay? And then the last one right here, again, this is another vertical one, so I'm going to write vertical. So that's going to be x equals a number. Look through here and see if you can figure out what number it equals. It would have to equal 2. Okay, so there's the equation. And then I'm going to say that this has no slope. That's kind of the way I like to talk. There are some people that say slope is undefined. Either way is totally okay. You need to be able to recognize both of them. Okay, let's take a look at the last one. It says try to put these linear equations in slope-intercept form and then state the slope and describe the line. Okay, so if we can, let's go ahead and do that. Notice this one has a y, so I can get y by itself. So I'm going to add 7 to both sides. So I get y equals 7. If I had to put it in slope-intercept form, I could write this. I'm going to leave it in that simplified form. And remember, if it's y equals a number, it's this type of case right here. It's a horizontal line. So horizontal line. Okay, so we've described it. And the slope on this one, I guess we should say that the slope is 0. Okay, so we'll do that and we'll do that. Okay, so the main answer is the equation, and then we said what the slope was and we described the line. Okay, this next one right here, we're going to get the x by itself. So since it's over here, I'm going to go ahead and move the 3 by subtracting 3. So I'm going to switch sides and say x is equal to -3. So there's our answer. This has no slope, okay, because it is a vertical line. Okay, so let's make sure we keep those straight. Never mix those up. They're really easy once you've got them figured out. But until you do, please make sure you're careful. Y equals a number is a horizontal line. It has a slope of 0. It's flat. There's something for us to land on. And if we get x equals a number, it's a vertical line. Straight up and down, there's no number that represents how steep a cliff is. Okay, and then this one looks a little bit weird. It's got a couple unsimplified terms here. So let's do this. Let's write down y plus 5 equals 10. Let's move the 5 to the other side, so we get y equals 5. There's the answer. Okay, that means this is going to be a flat line, perfectly horizontal. So horizontal, horizontal. I'll just do this. We'll make it really quick. Horiz, okay, so for horizontal. And we know that if it's horizontal, it's flat. That means the number that represents how steep it is 0. Okay? All right. These are pretty easy, but you can get the details mixed up. So please make sure you practice this the right way, think about it the right way. Go through and think about the words horizontal and vertical, and please get this memorized. Y equals a number is horizontal. X equals a number is vertical. Find some way for you that makes sense. Whether it's saying, okay, it tells me that it crosses the y-axis and it doesn't cross the other one, or crosses the x-axis and it doesn't cross the y-axis. Any way that makes sense is fine, as long as you make sure that you don't mix them up.